Welcome to Becoming Parents Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Campbell. I'm a doula in Washoe County, Nevada, a Medicaid provider, a lactation educator, childbirth educator, and mom of 18. You can find me and connect on doulainreno.com. Remember, give a shout out to those who are brave enough to share their stories with us on how they have become parents. Let's dive in. Welcome to Becoming Parents Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Campbell. I'm here with Arlene Cohen Miller. How are you today?
I'm great, thank you.
I would love you to jump in and start sharing your parenting journey.
Great. So I became a mom when I was 30, and it was a really interesting journey because I'm an attorney. Well, I'm a retired attorney. I do work-life balance, harmony, leadership coach for women now. And so I started my own law firm at 29.
Oh,
Found out that I was pregnant, and we were living up in Ohio. I was married then. All my family was in Kentucky. All my law school colleagues were in Kentucky. So I had no tribe. And I was starting a business, and my then husband was working like 70 plus hours a week because he was doing his internship to be a doctor after he graduated from medical school. So I had nobody. And so I guess what I needed to do, first of all, to be a mom and to be a businesswoman it took some time to gather a tribe of women around me, that could support me, that I could do things with, that could help me to be a better businesswoman. So it was a big journey, just to be pregnant my first year of opening my own business. And I remember when he was first born, I had like a swing in my law firm. It was just I had an office, and I shared office space with other attorneys and a few other businesses in a suburb called Lakewood, Ohio, which is on the west side of the Cuyahoga River. And that didn't work at all to practice law and have a kid on a swing. So I ended up hiring a wonderful nanny. So that was a journey as well, too, to find someone that I could take my son to when I was working. And so, yeah, it was very interesting. My first year after he was born, I found that I could only work part-time, that it was too much to do both full time. So
I
yeah,
mean,
that's how I
I could
spread
have
it out.
never been pregnant and worked. I'm so grateful that my tenure when I had pregnancies, I was at home. Like I was so sick. I don't know how anybody, just the exhaustion, even if you're not throwing up, just the exhaustion of being pregnancy, the newness of you'd never done it before. I can't even imagine that, let alone, hey, it's my first year and practicing law. I think I'll have a baby. That's nuts.
I had been a lawyer for 4 years. I just
Okay,
opened my own business,
got
and
it,
then I
got it.
found out I was pregnant. But what I did was
Still,
I had a couch in my office, and when I was pregnant, I would close the door, turn off the light, and take a nap when I just couldn't do anything anymore. So yeah, I was tired. I was tired the first 3 years I was a mom all the time.
oh, I can't even imagine. I mean, being a mom without working is exhausting. Being a mom with working, I've done both too. I've done the stay-at-home mom, the single mom who had to go back to work. I've done all of it, the remarried, and they're all hard, and they all have things that are hard and easy about them. But holy cow, that's a lot. So you were pregnant, yay, and you had your son. How did the pregnancy and delivery go? It was your first time. What was that like for you to navigate?
Well, it was really interesting because I was a swimmer at the time, and I did some running. And one of the guys who saw me swimming all the time, he decided he wanted to do a photo shoot of me when I was doing. There was like my ex was at the Cleveland Clinic. They had a huge pool, they had a huge weight room, and so I would go there to work out. And one of the guys there wanted to follow me in my pregnancy, like with weightlifting. I didn't do heavy stuff, so I had all sorts of pictures taken. I was a swimmer
Oh,
until I was having those contractions and I couldn't swim anymore. So I was a really, really healthy pregnant mom, but I'm a small bone person. I gained like 44 pounds. I was big. And so I inherited my mother's and my sister's genetic makeup. I literally was walking around the block at my house and like I can't walk anymore. Called my ex and said, I think I'm in labor. And he came and picked me up, and I literally delivered my son in 2 hours. So we tend to do it really fast in my family. And so I didn't have a shot. I didn't have any sort of medication to um, alleviate any of the pain. I just basically threw up, had him, and it was, it was done.
I mean, the good thing is with such a short labor, might not have even been worth it or and definitely wasn't necessary. I think once women go through something and then they realize, oh, like I can go through, I can do this, then they tend, if they wanted pain medication, they tend to not want pain medication. But bless you. My first one was 19 hours and that was fast for
I know
for
my
like
friends. Yeah, I know my friend. My aunt Estelle. She's not here anymore. She actually delivered her first or second child in a taxi cab. She couldn't make it to the hospital on time. So I don't know what my genetic makeup is. All I know is I'm pretty grateful. I made it to the hospital, and we do it quick.
I mean, I would just take that. That's awesome.
Yes.
What was so you had the swing? I know the first part of working, you could bring him with you. Did you take any time off? And then what was it like to practice law and have a baby with you? And take me through that chunk.
Well, I tried the swing, have him on the swing in the office. It just didn't work. And so the first year of his life, I worked half time. My ex made enough money that we had a roof over our head. They don't pay people that are in residency very much, but we had a roof over
Right.
our head. We had food on the table, and so that's what I did. And I'm really so grateful for that because I don't know how I could have made it otherwise. So
Yeah.
I found a wonderful, wonderful grandmother who was taking care of kids in her home. And because I interviewed a couple of people, I'm like, there's no way you're getting near my child. They just had weird stuff, like I left the baby crying, 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 crying. I'm like, we don't do that anymore. Some just weird shit. So I found a lovely, lovely woman, and she had a couple of daughters there that I think she had four kids that were still in high school. And she was loving and wonderful. And my son made friends there. And so she was my son's childcare until she got ill. And then her daughter became like my son's nanny when I wasn't working. And so I just feel really blessed that I found people so easily because it's like after a couple of interviews, I'm like, please help me find someone that I can trust that will love my child when I'm working. And so she was like a surrogate grandmother when we were there. I mean, I was flying home a lot to see both of the grandmothers, my mother and my ex's mother, because they wanted to see their first grandchild.
Yeah.
I feel really blessed for that. And so I was able, and after the first year of it, he was happy, he was thriving. I went back to work full time. And, but I was always self-employed. So I was able to drop things in a flash if he needed anything. And my full-time hours were never like crazy. I'd probably work 6 or 7 hours. And, so it worked out.
I love that. I didn't live around family either. And that's you I feel like when you're with family and you have that help and support, that's amazing. When you don't, you do need to create it. Looking back, that's the only way I feel like I survived. I mean, you figure out how to do things one way or another, but really, I just absolutely created this community around me that helped support. And I don't know how you do it without that. Honestly, I totally agree with you. Whether it's a surrogate grandmother or just other moms to help, I absolutely that was vital, vital
Yeah.
for me. You switch law firms. We're kind of going in chronological order. Um, and I'm not sure how old your son was when you switched.
So I sold my law practice. Well, I was the first 12 years of my practice, including when I was working for another solo practitioner. I learned because I was practicing under another attorney. You don't you learn a lot on the job when you're a lawyer. You get some basic education on how to do research and do certain things, but a lot of it's on the job. And he practiced family law, so divorce and child custody and child visitation and getting restraining orders against violent husbands and stuff like that.
Mm,
He also did collection law. He helped businesses collect their debts. And so that's what I knew how to do. But I just
yeah.
started off in family law, and then I got really burnt out. I just came from a nice middle class family in Louisville, Kentucky, and I had never seen people in the middle of divorces and people putting their kids between themselves. And people that were having drinking and drug problems and had kids. And I was, I just wasn't prepared. They didn't have like coaches like me back then.
Yeah.
The problem really wasn't something that I needed to talk to a counselor or psychologist about. It was about, learning how to have clear, strong, and appropriate boundaries and deal with this in a way that I could still keep my sanity.
Yeah.
So, a couple of years before I sold my practice, I just went full time into commercial law, helping businesses collect monies that were due to them,
Okay.
which is much easier. And so when my son was 9 and I was divorced then, I sold the business and I moved to Colorado, Longmont, Colorado, where I live now, and used the money to buy into a small like boutique law firm. And it was really, really good for my son because he had bad asthma and the weather in Cleveland was not good for that. He came to Colorado, didn't need a ventilator, not those things you put over your mouth or anything anymore, hardly. He barely used his inhalers because it's very
Oh,
dry
good. That's
and
so good.
sunny. So I
Yeah.
didn't know that would be such a great thing, but it was really, really good for him to move to Colorado.
Yeah, I imagine that it would be, even though that might not have been a consideration initially. That's awesome. And you really like the shift in your career too. That seemed like it went better as well.
Yeah, there's enough stress with being a mother, but you're dealing with people at their worst a lot of times when they're going through divorce.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I could have done it, but I just like the women that were really, really successful in the law doing my kind of work, it's like they had a really thick wall between them and the rest of the world. They stopped feeling as much. And I'm like, I don't want to become that.
Yeah.
And because you have to deal with other attorneys, and a lot of them are very nice, but you get some really bad eggs there in the domestic relations law who use really obnoxious behavior. And the judges at that point were still putting up with some of it. I didn't
Mm.
agree with it, but I was not in the place to change the system. So, yeah, it was a good move for me, and I believe my son to have a more relaxed mom and doing a kind of law where I was still helping people, but my sanity was restored.
I think that's so great. I'm not sure what you can take this any direction you want because you started a new business, which is amazing. And I know that that helped you, but there's also something that you healed from specifically from when your son was 2. I want you to
But
share
yeah,
that.
yeah,
I
I
want I
did.
want I want you to share that story.
Yeah, so well, actually, we I told my ex I wanted a divorce when my son was like 2.5. And by the time we got divorced, he was almost 3. And at that time, he developed pretty severe ADHD.
Mm,
So it wasn't as bad at first, but by the time he was 7, he was like chewing through his clothes, and I was having a lot of parent teacher conferences because I didn't want to put him straight away on drugs.
yeah.
That just like, um, and his father didn't want it either because they're like amphetamines for some of these kids with ADHD. So it was a big deal, because um, well, I guess now with everything I've gone through to be a coach, and I did get some counseling with it because I was kind of beside myself and I was taking it personally,
Mm,
because as he grew up, his behavior would like push other kids away from him because he was hyperactive and he was acting up and he was chewing through his clothes and he couldn't sit still. I mean, if they had schools where the kids could go out and run and play and scream and do stuff more, I think he would have done a lot better. So it was just hard. It was hard going at first because he became so yeah, we got divorced and I was working with all of that. And he would go over to his dad's house on the weekends, but they sort of did their own thing. We didn't communicate. And he had another person in his life by then. So it was just trial and error. I learned a bunch of healing modalities. I took him to a bunch of different healers. Some of it helped, to calm him down a little bit, but when he was about 9, it just really got out of control.
mm,
And I got really worried. I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to handle this, when he's bigger than me. And so we did put him on, it was Ritalin at first and then Adderall.
yep.
And it just changed everything immediately. And so it did help, and by the time he was 11, he was into chess and he found friends who were interested in
Mm,
chess, started having friends, and his whole life changed. But I don't know any parent that's raised a kid with ADHD. it's a journey. And I really had to acknowledge in the meantime, because my son is grown, he's married, he has a kid of his own. He goes, Mom, you genetically passed this to me. And for years I said, no, 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 not me. But I do. I can feel the ADD stuff in me. I mean, I've always been
Okay.
able to do things, but yeah, I can feel that stuff in me now. We never diagnosed it, and I didn't have the problems that he did because
Yeah.
he had the hyperactivity part of it. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey.
Wow. Um, I love that he got into chess and that was something that really worked. It's interesting with any kind of healing modality. Some things work for some people really, really well, and other things not so much. I've had similar conversations with my own kids, especially as they become adults and they know themselves better and they're trying to determine what's the best fit. And sometimes it's talk therapy and sometimes it's something completely different, but to just be open to there's an issue and you want to have it be easier or have some resolution and what works the best for you and how you think and feel and respond to stuff because it's been wildly different from even within the same person. Talk to me about the transition and
Can I share one other thing that I learned
yes.
later to help people who have kids with ADHD that I didn't know then is that if you find a good chiropractor, some of these kids need adjustments in their spinal column like 3 times a week. But that I've heard can make a huge difference. So if you have a kid with ADHD and you don't know what to do, I didn't know that back then. And then I read all these
Mm.
studies where it really helped a lot. So I just wanted to let all the moms out there, if you have a kid like that, you might want to look into it and find especially one that's really good with kids.
That's so like off this way, not what you would think. I mean, I have a son who's autistic, and I went the no medication route also. And you have to be really out of the box creative and realize, I mean, that makes sense because chiropractically, they're working with your central nervous system.
Right.
I mean, ultimately, that is what they're doing, whether the chiropractor is up to date on that specifically or not. Yeah, it's everything about your central nervous system. So that's really fascinating. That's a great piece of advice. Talk to me about transitioning from being an attorney to what you're doing now. How old was your son when that happened, when you switched gears?
Oh, he was graduated from college
Okay.
and everything. He was out
Okay.
of that.
Adult.
But I start and he did work for us for a little bit when he after he graduated from college. He tried to work for other people. He was like his mom. It just did not work. And we gave him a job in our law firm for a little bit, and that didn't work either. So he's really good at being his own boss. He has his
Yeah.
own company now where he teaches before and after school chess and runs tournaments and does camps for kids in the summer. And it's
Oh,
for him, but it took a while for him to get there because he kept on getting fired from jobs because he's just really good at being his own boss and not so good for working for other people. Maybe it's genetic too because my father, had that entrepreneurial gene and I got it too. But anyway, about 6 years before we sold the business, I've had some really, really amazing women friends, and one started her own coaching company and kept on encouraging me to go through it. And I was like, I don't need it. I have an undergraduate in political science. I'm an attorney. And then about the third year she was doing this, I sort of realized, I'm not a very good listener. And I was in charge of the marketing, and I was in charge of negotiating settlements for our law firm and other stuff. We had a few employees. It was small,
yeah.
and I decided I'd take the leap. And so I got that diploma from coaching and mentoring. And another friend of mine was amazing, and she was a counselor. I don't know, a therapist. But anyway, so I took a course from her as a diploma in transformational holistic counseling. And another friend of mine was amazing with meditation. So I got certification in that. And I did that all before I knew I was going to leave the law. I just figured all these things are really cool. And I was kind of crazy to do them. But my son was on his own by then. And I just love learning. And so I got all that accreditation. And then I just like when you're a lawyer, you can't go anywhere and you own your own business, especially, you can't go anywhere without it being there with you. If you're going on vacation, if you're going on a business trip, it's always there. And as a coach, as a mentor, you can set your own schedule. You're still helping people, but it doesn't have the same kind of stress. I can't hear you.
I'm sorry, I muted. My dog is playing with a toy behind me and or next to me, and it's very loud. I'm so sorry.
I can't hear a thing.
I imagine that it was much easier for you, different too. I mean, really different. How was it just an easy transition for you all the way around? You're still your own boss, essentially.
Yeah.
But how was it? I just can't imagine going from attorney to coach, although maybe there are a lot of similarities in like how your presentation, how you um, work through it and work with people because you're essentially counseling them, like an attorney would, correct?
Not really.
No.
Coaching is more partnering with the person walking alongside of them, and they're the expert. And so you
Mm,
have to know how to ask empowering questions, share insights, say things that help them move forward, you support them. And mentoring is more people are standing on your shoulders from the wisdom that you've had from whatever you learned in life or studied. So it was a big
mm.
transition, but I had already practiced law for 30 years then. And I thought I could keep on doing it, but I got a little burnt out. I was just ready for a change. And so we sold the practice.
Wow.
We
Okay.
had two entities that bought it from us. It was not a big transition. And it was a transition to go into something new more than I thought it would be because the law practice was a pretty cushy thing by the time we sold it. You know, we got to travel around the country to go to business meetings to meet people who would
Mhm.
send us business, and they became like our family, and we would do fun things with them on these little convention things. And it was really wonderful. And, you know, sometimes when you just know that it's time for a change, you need to listen to that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Let's pause there and say that one again. I mean, you know what's interesting? I was born in 70. I we're pretty close in age. And I was just thinking the other day I said to my daughter, it used to be a big thing for our generation where we reinvented ourselves. And I'm like, you don't reinvent yourself. You are showing different facets of who you are as time goes by and life experience go by and society things change like politically or economically or in your area. You kind of just roll with some of that. And so you're not like stopping and deciding like, well, who am I now? Like it's this brand new person. You're pivoting to another part of who you are. I feel like, I don't know, I just always felt like the reinventing was you're something totally different and you're not. You're still you using your experience. I want you to talk about your healing journey in this. And there was one incident that happened when your son was barely 2 that you never addressed, which is fascinating. I want to know how much time went
I
by because
forgot what incident, what was that?
miscarriage.
Oh, yes. Oh,
Yeah. See, I
that
have
was
your bullet point notes. I'm
I
like pretending I don't know, but I
it's
do
like
know.
what someone used to. Yes. That was a really wake up call for me. You know, I didn't know that I was carrying a child that didn't connect to, you know, the uterus. And so I went to see the doctor, nothing was happening, and you have to have a DNC because the baby didn't latch on. And so I went and had the DNC and came back home and I started like bleeding big globs and bucketfuls of blood. So I went back in the hospital. I was there for a whole week. I still had my law practice. My son was 2. Yeah, so I had the law practice for less than 2 years because he was born like 9 months into
Mm-hmm.
law practice. Yeah, or 10 and something like that. Anyway, so I was bleeding big globs of whatever, you know, I don't know. And they had me on about 5 antibiotics. I was sick, pretty sick. I was in there for a week. And I got my mother. She came up from Louisville, Kentucky. She helped me. God love her. She has no sense of
Mm.
direction before you could put the thing on your phone to go back and forth to the hospital. And
Yeah,
she
right.
brought me my son every day. And it was a really interesting learning experience for me because what I found out was I was a solo practitioner. I had a paralegal that worked for me part time. That's all I really needed. And it was before I was doing so much commercial law and I'd left the divorce stuff. And I just found out, hey, the world will go on without me. That's what I learned during that week. The world is going to go on without me, whether I'm there or not. And it just gave me this like, wow, it sounds horrible, but for some reason that gave me peace.
Oh,
No, and not to take myself so seriously and to think I'm the end all and be all to anything. If I
yeah,
die here, the world is going to, because I mean, there's no one really to run my law practice. It was just
right.
me. Just had to put everything on hold for a week and I would, have the person who was answering the phone let people know. But it was just a very like sobering thing. And
Sobering.
it was, I mean, I felt there was a lot of grief on losing a child.
Yeah.
Um, and at this, I did not deal with it at the time. I had my son, he was 2. I had a business, I had to go back to work. I didn't really deal with it. I had a healing session with a couple of ladies years later, and all of a sudden all that stuff came up and I was just like crying through the whole thing. So it was many years later that I actually let all that stuff go. I didn't realize the impact of it. I already had a son that was healthy, and I never dealt with it till I was older.
I still think that, well, women don't talk to each other from the moment we have periods and feel embarrassed to put tampons on the conveyor belt at the grocery store, which makes no sense to me. But like from that moment all the way through it, infertility, pregnancy, postpartum, miscarriage, menopause, like we just don't. We should be banding together, lifting each other up, and having conversations. And I think it's gotten better. My miscarriage was, I think, 22 years ago. It was twins at 16 weeks, and I didn't deal with it until like 4 years ago. I mean, I went nearly 20 years. And because you're still kind of taught, like, okay, it's done. You were pregnant, you're not pregnant, walk it off, go back to work. Nothing's ever said to help you deal with the fact that this was a child that you wanted, and this child's gone and there's nothing you can do. So that's huge for me. And yeah. So tell me about switching gears in your job and how that process healed you in different ways.
Um, I loved being an attorney and I loved helping people, but it's totally different, coaching women, because as a working mother who had a baby her first year and was really the sole person to take care of him because my ex was working so many hours, um, I know how they feel.
Yeah.
Whether they are working or not working. I've been through all that. I just really know how it feels, and so I really enjoy being that work life harmony and leadership coach for women because women today are really stressed. My mother had made the choice to be a stay-at-home mom. Her parents were poor; they both had to work.
Right.
And she took care of a lot of the finances for my dad's business and for the household. That's what she wanted to do. But she made that choice, and so did a lot of women of her generation. And a lot of women now they can't make that choice and have a roof over their heads. Um, the way things are now, how expensive they are. And so yeah, I
Mm.
just get a lot of women with kids or without kids. They're just stressed. How do you balance all of that? And
Yeah.
it's my pleasure to work with them, because I've been there and done that. And I also joined, even though I'm not a practicing attorney anymore, I joined the Colorado Women's Bar Association for the same reason. I'm the only grandmother in there. And
Mm.
I really enjoy participating, being a part of the committees, and just being someone there who anyone can talk to if they want to, if they're going through stuff.
Right.
So it's such a joy to work with them because lots of times it's our attitude, but and just switching around a few things can make things so much better. Sometimes it's just
Yeah.
stopping to feel selfish. Sometimes it's learning how to delegate. It's all kind of really small things that we can do so that we feel different on the inside, which I help them do. Maybe like working with their inner coach instead of their inner critic, or getting
Mm.
out in nature, or practicing some breath work, or just doing things that light them up. that you don't have to wait till your kids are grown. If you want to learn how to play a musical instrument or go for a run, you can make time for that too. So
Yeah.
I really love it.
Oh, I love that you love it. That's so great. Other than the fact that women are really stressed, what are the top things that they're stressed about, feeling stress about?
Well, it's like, how do I balance all that? How do I harmonize all this? Lots of
Mm,
times I get really together women, and maybe they have it all together at home and work's not so great, or it's
yeah.
all together at work and then home's not so great. So usually there's some part of their life that's going great and it's smooth and they have it together, and some part of their life that's not. I mean, I don't get any women that are coming to see me now that aren't stressed in some way, shape, or form. And maybe they go to other kind of coaches. Maybe they go to an executive coach if it's just about business stuff and climbing the corporate ladder, and or how to really, I don't know what I'm not really an executive coach, but it's much more about leadership and business than I am. So the women that come to me, they're seeking harmony, they're seeking some sort of relief. They need to let things go and kind of reharmonize and restructure their life in a way that's going to work for them. So that's what I seem to get. And I talk to other coaches,
Yeah.
and that's what they're seeing a lot of as well, no matter what kind of coach they are when women come to them right now.
I love this. I love what you do. Your son's an adult. We've already established that. And you said you're a grandma.
Right.
What's that switch? Does he live near you still?
Yeah, I have well, I've been married and divorced twice. And so my second ex is 12 years older than me, and we still get along. We're good friends. And so all three kids, he had two kids, and I have one, and all three kids have one kid, and all those grandkids live close by.
Oh,
And so my granddaughter's into dance, really, really good. She's almost 16. And my son's son is 12, and he's on the spectrum and he's doing pretty good. And my other granddaughter is 9 and just a pistol and very athletic and outgoing. And so I feel really blessed. First of all, that I get along so well with my second husband and we do things together and we do the grand stuff together. And just to have everybody close by. And it's so much easier than being a mother. You
oh
love
my
them, you
gosh, right?
with them, and then you hand them back. And it's like such a joy. And so, yeah, I'm very grateful to be a grandmother. And because my second ex is 12 years older than me, I became a grandmother, pretty young in life.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it's fun. You're going to love it. Are you
Oh,
grandmother yet?
I'm a grandma. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah, I do. I sometimes I think you should be a grandmother before a mother, like to ease your way into it. But it is definitely it's like the best reward for working so hard to raise your own kids, is that it's like kind of getting them back a little bit in a non-committed way, having those moments with your grandkids. Yeah, I absolutely love it. Absolutely think it's great. That's awesome. Arlene, thank you so much for being on. I appreciate you so much.
Well, thank you. I'm glad we connected and it all worked out.